I'm Dr. Chamonix Blanche, ex-corporate and academical, turned CEO and board member of several companies and mother of 4 little extraordinary kids. But it wasn't that long ago that I lacked the confidence, the know-how, and the time to focus on designing and really going after the life that I so wanted to live. A life of freedom, of fairness, and of being fair dinkum to who I really was and what I wanted to get out of this fleeting time that we have on Mother Earth. Fast forward to many lessons learned and moving halfway around the world to the most amazing country, you'll see the life that I now live. One that gives me more safety and freedom than I ever thought would be possible, and that really only existed as a daydream while I was living in South Africa. I created Chamonix TV to give you true spot advice on how you can also live a life in this amazing country, and so that you can see how another couple like us now live in Australia with 4 little kids hearing down under. And I'll be providing you with step-by-step strategies so that you can make your Aussie dream a reality too. If you're a keen future Aussie who's looking to create a life that excites you and offers you safety, freedom, and opportunity, you have come to the right place, my friend. Welcome aboard.
Hi, Warren. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And if you don't mind introducing yourself to our viewers.
Yes, my name's Warren. Married to Wendy. I've got 3 kids. Daisy's 13 and Seth's 11. Ruth is 9. We live in Rockhampton, which is in central Queensland. So we've got the Tropic of Capricorn that runs straight through Rockhampton.
So do you guys ever wear jumpers?
It does get a bit cool in the middle of winter. I wear my slops almost all year round, or my thongs, as we call them in Australia. Yes, I do. Early in the morning, sometimes it gets a bit cool. Not too much lately, not in the last year or two. It's been fairly mild. But no, it certainly gets hot, more hot than it gets cold.
So where are you from in South Africa originally?
I grew up in Durban. My wife, Wendy, grew up in Durban as well, born in East London. So we moved to Durban at a fairly young age as a child.
Lucky you. You've always been in nice tropical climate.
Yeah, that's right. No, the cold weather wouldn't do too much for us, I don't think. So we don't mind the cold every now and then, but I'm not sure if we want to live in it to long term.
So did you guys specifically seek out to go to Rockhampton for the weather, or how did that process for you work?
So before we left South Africa, we actually went down to the Gold Coast, which I think is a fairly popular destination for many South Africans. We actually lived on the Gold Coast for about 5 years. And that was probably back in about 2007. We immigrated out, and we were there for about 4 or 5 years. And then we had the downturn, the GFC came through and what have you. And I got another job opportunity out in the mines. So I actually work out in a coal mine, a fairly big mining company out in central Queensland. So that sort of facilitated a transition from the work I was doing as a civil engineer, and then I sort of changed career paths and went into mining. So started off in the Gold Coast, moved to a mining town for about another 4 years, and then we've moved down to Rockhampton. Well, I haven't done the maths, but I think it's about 3 years, so whatever adds up to about 13 years.
So how did you get a job in the Gold Coast initially? Because mining and Gold Coast doesn't go hand in hand.
No. I got into mining by mistake. It was never part of the plan. I started off studying civil engineering at Natal Tech. So we went backwards and forwards for a number of years, so bouncing backwards and forwards between the UK and back to South Africa. So I studied my BTEC degree, which is a 3-year degree at Natal Tech, and then based on those points, we sort of came out to Australia, and then I worked as a civil engineering technologist. Just in case there's any engineers listening, that they'll point out that a technologist is different to an engineer. So I worked as a civil engineering technologist for about 4 or 5 years in the Gold Coast, and then that downturn came through. Back in 2010, 2011, I don't know if you remember, we had fairly severe flooding in Queensland.
Yes.
And the guys I was working for picked up some work just trying to de-water all the mining pits and whatever. So it just coincided that things were still booming in the mines back in 2010, 2011, 12, whatever. Combined with the downturn on the Gold Coast, an upturn in the work in the mines, and I also just did fly in, fly out work as a contract engineer for about 18 months. And then, just got a job offer from one of the mines out there. So, and then, took it from there.
So you decided to move everybody up to Rockhampton.
Yeah, it was a pretty big call, because we actually lived, so when I say the Gold Coast, just to be sort of technically a little bit more accurate, we actually lived in northern New South Wales. So the northern New South Wales, the sort of the Tweed Valley area, it's on the southern end of the Gold Coast. Officially, we were a few hundred meters across the border. I think you probably would have seen in the news to some of the dramas people are having in northern New South Wales.
Yes, I just wanted to say, aren't you glad you're not living there right at the moment?
Very much so. We can sort of empathise. We lived it. We had New South Wales number plates in the car, but we used to work on the Gold Coast. And then we were down there for 4 or 5 years, and it ended up as an upturn in the mines. And I wanted to study further, so I actually ended up studying for another 4 or 5 years to try and get my equivalent of a bachelor's engineering degree, which I did. And then with the job offer from the mines, it was a fairly good job offer. I decided to keep studying part-time, and said to Wendy, well, let's say goodbye to the Gold Coast or northern New South Wales for a few years. We'll go out there and study. We'll do this is a fairly typical story. We'll go there for 4 or 5 years and then go back to the lifestyle we had. And the same as many, many people, once you get your foot in the door, you often don't go back. So we were out there for 4 or 5 years in a little mining town. Wendy was homeschooling the kids, and I suppose my eldest Daisy got up to about the age of 10, and we thought high school was going to be approaching at some stage. Are we going to keep homeschooling the kids, or what are we going to do? And we decided we'll bring it back down to a bigger, more regional town, get them into decent schools and things like that. So that's how we sort of came to Rockhampton. Rockhampton was never on the cards. It was never on the job in mining was never on the job list either. Just various doors open and various doors closed, and we sort of just went with it, I think. Yeah.
So did you study your further qualification or your engineering degree through one of the universities in Australia, UQ, or
yes,
who did you go through?
Went through University of Southern Queensland, USQ. One of the things is, back in South Africa, if you've studied a BTEC degree, you can get your PR Tech Eng, which gives you certification. You don't have that similar qualification here in Australia. So when I got to Australia, I saw my qualifications only sort of 3/4 of the way there. So I needed to try and sort of get the last quarter. But you couldn't just do the last quarter. You've actually got to take a couple of steps backwards. So I enrolled with USQ, and I carried on studying part-time. And that actually, it sounds fairly fancy, but that gave me a Master's of Engineering Practice in civil engineering, which allowed me to go on and get certified or registered as a civil engineer. The irony is I've actually never used it. I've turned my back on it, and I've gone into a different sort of career path now. But it was through USQ.
But you're still doing engineering now?
No. No.
Right.
It's a safety net. No. I work in operations as a production coordinator on a mine site. It's a good wage. It gives me an even time roster. So I work away for 7 days and then come home for 7 days. So your normal white collar jobs are sort of Monday to Friday. This is a site-based operations role. So I work 7 days and I come home for 7 days. So yeah.
Yeah, well, I like that roster where it's 50-50 or
nice,
1 to 1 away, because often it's 2-1, 2 weeks away, 1 week at home.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
So I think that's a good balance to have it. And how does your family settle? Or how have they settled into you being away?
I actually think I miss them more than they miss me, to be honest. Because I go away to the mine site and I stay in a mining camp, and then everything changes. It's a different bed. It's a different sort of routine. Whereas Wendy and the kids still carry on doing the same thing. So they still wake up, do lunches, they go to school. Wendy's gone back to work in the last sort of 2 or 3 years. So she works school hours when I'm gone away for work for a week. But they're all very much the same. So their bed's the same, the kitchen's the same, their routine's very much the same. It's just, I'll come back, I'll help out, carry the load, and then I'm gone. So fortunately, Wendy's a very capable woman to shoulder it all when I'm gone.
So what does Wendy do during the day when the kids are at school?
So she has reinvented herself as a natural health practitioner. So she works for a natural health, a naturopath here in town. So she works in nutrition and things like that, with all natural sort of remedies and things like that. So she's
Did she
fortunate
do that
in
in South Africa too?
No, she also reinvented herself. So both of us have actually reinvented ourselves since we've been here in Australia.
Isn't
She
that
was
wonderful? Yeah. Sorry, I'm interrupting you
no,
all the time.
no, that's okay. She studied something completely different at Natal Tech as well. She was a year behind me at Tech. So yeah.
So what did she study at Natal Tech?
At Natal Tech, she studied microbiology. So she did have a sort of a science background. Or saying that she worked as a microbiologist in Durban for a few years, and then I was going back in time now. In 2000, we actually packed up, went across to the UK just to work and travel for a little while, and then she got out of the microbiology, I think back then already, and then from 2000 to about 2006 or 7, we flip-flopped backwards and forwards between the UK and South Africa a few times. And during that sort of process, she no longer worked as a microbiologist anymore. So she ended up doing other things or whatever. So,
Do you think your stint up to the UK has made you more interested in moving to another country on a longer term?
Well, that's interesting. The first time around, no. The first time back in the early 2000s, we actually just went to go and jawl. We went to go and earn a bit of money and just travel.
Yeah.
I think I was 22, 23 at the time. Had no interest in leaving South Africa at all. We just wanted to travel, see the world, just take things on as it went. Went back to South Africa after a couple of years in the UK, and then I think all South Africans have got a few war stories. Had one or two incidents, and then I think we were newly married then, and Wendy and I said, well, what are we going to do with it? Are we going to have kids one day? Yes, we are going to have kids one day. Well, what future? Where do we want to raise them? I thought, well, we might look at something that gives a better prospect or a better future for the kids. So there's then we went back to the UK a second time. At that stage, a second time, we went with the intent of trying to save up some money, because at that stage we'd put papers to immigrate to Australia. So it evolved over a few years. So
why Australia then? Why not Canada or the UK or New Zealand?
I do have cousins in New Zealand, and New Zealand looks very nice. And I've got cousins in Canada as well. I think growing up in Durban, I surfed a lot. I used to enjoy my surfing and outdoor. And that sounds very, it doesn't sound like there's a lot of integrity involved with that, but that was the lifestyle and sort of the culture I was familiar with. Canada, it just looks like a big lifestyle change. It's cold for a large part of the year. A lot of activities are snow and sort of ice hockey and things like that. New Zealand does look very nice and very attractive. I think all Kiwis come to Australia. So there's a reason why there's a brain drain from New Zealand to Australia. So I think we probably came for, the climate is most similarly aligned to what we had in Durban and in South Africa. And Australia is just, there's a lot of opportunity. It's a very big country. There's a lot of space. It's such a small, I don't know what the population is. Is it 25 million or thereabouts?
Yeah.
They're around about 25 million. There's a lot of space. It's a very big country, and there's just a lot of opportunity in Australia.
I have to say, I think I was really naive when I came to Australia the first time. I had no clue how big this country really was.
It is very big.
And when you start flying from Perth to Brisbane and you realize it's 5.5 hours flight, it's like, wow, you fly from Joburg to Cape Town, it's like 1 hour and a little bit, and then you come to Australia.
So we actually came over blind. So we'd never been to Australia before. Wow. So when we first put papers to come into Australia, we'd lived with a few Aussies in the UK, and we thought, oh, they look nice enough, friendly enough people. So we put the papers in, and then we actually came over having never set foot here before. So when we landed in Sydney International Airport and made our way up to Brisbane, and then had an old school friend pick us up, didn't know the first thing about Australia. Everything's completely foreign. So we really did take a leap of faith.
Did you had your visa sorted? Was it PR or what visas did you come on?
I can't remember the type of visa. It was a skilled migration visa, and actually there was a lesson in it. So going back from the UK, I decided to study my BTEC degree back in the Teltech. I did the degree the first time around, and then put papers to come into Australia straight away. And we actually went through an agent. We did a bit of a screening process with the agent and all the rest of it, and everything seemed okay. And then we actually got rejected because we didn't have the mandatory 3 years post-grad experience. Well, back then you had to have 3 years post-grad experience. And I didn't know that. I was resting just on the agents. And it was an oversight or an undersight on their behalf. So they actually came back with the bad news and said, sorry, Australia said, no thanks, they've rejected you. So we're in a bit of a quandary. We didn't know what to do. So we
didn't you say to the agent, you should have told us, or why didn't you pick up on it? Of course. So, yeah.
100%. We said, this is your stuff up. I mean, this is on your shoulders. So they agreed to cover the costs and cover all the fees and all the rest of it for us to reapply. In the meantime, we had another 2 or 3 years of sort of dead time to go and do something else. So we actually went on a second tour of the UK then. And in 3 years' time, after 3 years experience, we applied a second time. And that took a little while as well. But eventually the paperwork came through. By the time the paperwork came through, Wendy had fallen pregnant. She was coming up to 30 years old, and she always said she wants the first child by the time she's 30. And we hadn't heard the second time around. We thought, right, we're just going to make do in South Africa. We'll just make the best of living back home in South Africa. And then, yeah, the papers came through, and Wendy was pregnant all at once.
Wow, that's a brave move to move over with a baby in the tummy.
It was.
How far pregnant was she when you guys arrived here?
So she stayed at home for the first trimester, and I actually came out ahead to try and get a job and whatever. I had an old school friend on the Gold Coast. So I crashed at his place for the first couple of weeks. I managed to get myself a job with a civil engineering consultancy. And then after the first 3 months, Wendy actually flew out to join us. We had nothing. I'll never forget the first unit we rented up the northern end of the Gold Coast. I went to the op shop. I don't know what an op shop in South Africa is.
Second-hand store.
Second-hand store. I got a few knives and forks, a few plates. I think I bought a bean bag, got a little coffee table. Because we'd just been traveling, we had a little bit of money saved up. So the intention was just to save up some money, and we were going to buy all our stuff here in Australia. Wendy said to me, don't buy anything until she gets here. So so she so she landed 3 months pregnant, and yeah, we borrowed a mattress from somebody. We slept on the floor for the first couple of months. And just bought a microwave and got a TV and slowly built ourselves up from the ground up.
I understand and appreciate exactly what you mean, because I've been through the same thing. I know what it feels like. It's amazing how much we can actually manage to go through, and how we can adapt when initially, you think, oh, I'm going to a new country, it's going to be so daunting, but you just make it work. You find ways. I mean, you came without a job, crashed with a friend, and then that was, you were going to make it work. And it's great how we adapt to our circumstances, and just if you have the right mindset, by the way, because
100%.
Come and do that and sit in a corner and say, oh no, I'm just scared, I'm not going to go out and reach out and try and find a job. Jobs need to come to me. And it's like, no, it doesn't work that way. So how did you guys 100%. Settle in terms of friends? How did you find your feet here?
We actually we went to a local church down there in the Gold Coast, a Presbyterian church, and they reached out to us straight away. It was actually, so we started off in the northern end of the Gold Coast. We bought a house when Wendy was 8 months pregnant, and we across the Tweed Valley, and suddenly the hospital we're going to kicked us out, said, you can no longer come here. And Wendy had obviously built up this relationship with the gynae and obstetrician and all the rest of it, and we didn't know anybody in Australia. We didn't know anyone on the Gold Coast. So suddenly, to change hospitals seems like a very, it doesn't seem like a big deal, but when you don't know too many people, it is a big deal, particularly when you're 8 months pregnant. So I went down to the local church, one of the Presbyterian churches, and they reached out to us. They just saw this new couple walk in, 8 months pregnant, didn't know too many people, didn't know too much what's going on. And they actually they were wonderful. They gave us a great helping hand, just with food and things like that, and give us a bit of a direction and things like that. Yeah. So.
And you feel like this is home now, Australia?
It's funny you say that. I'm never entirely sure until I go back to South Africa, and then I realize Australia is our home. So you always have these nostalgic feelings too when you think you're a kid growing up, and the sounds and the memories and the smells and whatever. And there are certain smells that just take you home. But when you've been here, it's sort of it's not a light bulb moment. Suddenly Australia's home. I think it slowly grows on you over time, and then you go back to South Africa and you realize this is no longer home. Although it's always in your blood. I mean, we're born and bred in South Africa. It's in your blood. I support the Springboks. I love the South African cricket. It's still, I'm passionate about them. But yes, Australia's home. Yeah.
Mm. And your kids, have they been back to South Africa or been to South Africa?
Yes. No, they've been probably about 3 times, I think. So all our extended family is still back there. So Wendy's folks are still back there as well. So yeah, I think we've been back 3 or 4 times, I'd say. 3 times for sure, yeah.
And what's the best thing?
Mm-hmm.
They love it. The family love.
Yeah. Everyone loves it.
Good. You'd hate for them to come and visit and not like it.
No.
Then, yeah.
Well, the grandparents obviously love seeing the grandkids and things like that. And my kids get spoiled and things like that. Because I mean, that's the small downside, I suppose, is you don't see your grandparents. But my kids don't see their grandparents too often, maybe a couple of years. But yeah.
It's interesting how people mention that often, but if you hear from other South Africans who still live in South Africa, who don't see the grandparents at all, and they live in the same country.
Yeah, I know. I often do think about that.
Often how South Africans who live in Australia spend more quality time with their family from South Africa who either come to visit here or when you go to visit there than what they ever spent together when they were living in the same country. It's interesting.
I know. Yeah, I know. I agree with that. Well, otherwise you sometimes get the polar opposite. I know there's a few families here where there might be a bit of bad blood in the family, and then they don't see the uncle at all because someone had an argument, back in the day, and then the uncle suddenly don't talk to this auntie or whatever. And anyway.
So what's the best thing for you about living in Australia?
Oh, there are a few things. I think when certainly when I first arrived, everything just works. When I first came over and I had to go do my driver's license, you walk into the main roads department and in a very orderly, calm way, you just go and take your number, you go sit down and they call you and you go, I had to do my learner's driver's license. Those are the laws when I first came over. Or you go into the beach and there's gas barbecues for free down there on the beach, and the toilets all clean and sort of functioning and things like that. So certainly, and
they have toilet paper.
And toilet paper, exactly. I've got 2 daughters as well, so things like that are very important, and the toilets are clean. So the fact that everything works, and I think you can also see a large percentage of the population pays their taxes, and the taxes do generally work for you. You can see your taxes at work. I think it's probably the other big thing is everyone earns fairly well in Australia. Australia is an expensive country when you first come here, but I think it's expensive because your minimum wage is so high, and that benefits everybody. So yeah, certainly I think the large tax base that gets paid, and there's a couple other things as well. The thing that always stands out to me is the Australians have a go attitude. They'll often say, just have a go, mate, have a go, mate. And that could be for anything, whether you're at work or you're at school or you're playing footy, back yourself and have a go. And that always stands out to me. Just don't let fear or trepidation hold you back. Just rather have a go, fall over and fail, and pick yourself up and have another go. It's sort of like almost that pioneering spirit that I do enjoy that aspect about the Australians or the Aussies.
I agree. And that's why you and your wife, for example, reinvented yourself, I'm sure, because it's that have a go kind of spirit that's probably brushed off on you. And I've seen it with so many South Africans as well coming to Australia who have reinvented themselves, changed careers. I've changed careers a number of times since I've come to Australia.
It's amazing.
And and isn't it great, because you can do something until you feel, I don't know, or you find some other interest and you go, I'm going to go off on that tangent and I'm going to try that out. And if it doesn't work, so what? Then you go back or you try something else.
I wouldn't say, certainly, I don't know for Australians who are born and bred and raised up here, whether they can see it, but certainly as a foreigner coming in, I won't say you can't fail. but gee, you'd almost have to try very hard to fail in Australia, because the government gives you money handout. I mean, they give you social welfare. When we first came out, I had a very meager earning wage, and obviously we had Daisy, and the government, I'll never forget. So within the first 2 months, Daisy was born, and the child payment was $4,000. And I remember thinking, I said to Wendy, the government's just given us $4,000 for having a baby. Like, what? What's going on? How does that work? Why are they giving us money to have a baby? And then the wage was that we qualified for not social welfare. What do you call it? The family assistance. That's what it is. We qualified for family assistance. So for the next couple of years, the government said, "Oh, well, you're not earning enough. Here's a bit of extra money in your bank account." And it is a fairly foreign concept, but we love it. I mean, everyone pays the taxes, and the government's obviously able to help you out if they can. So.
Yeah, well, that's in a way how it should be. It's like having parents who look after the kids who are trying to find their way in life. You know, you're trying a little bit this way, a little bit that way, and if you fall, they're there to catch you. So that's what's great about the system. Yeah. So we've spoken about what's the best thing for you about Australia. What's the thing that either annoys you or irritates you, or is the worst thing for you about Australia? I like your cats in the background, by the way. Very cute.
Well, we've got 2 indoor cats, we've got an outdoor cat, and we've got 2 outdoor dogs as well. So. Oh,
you're very busy. Animals, cute.
3 kids and 5 animals. I don't know if anything annoys me as such. I don't think anything annoys me. I think we're all fairly grateful. Almost daily for the opportunities we have in Australia. Have no doubt things do get hard though. I said I'll go away for 7 days, and Wendy's at home with the kids by herself, and she's back at work. She's got 3 lunch boxes to prepare, dinner to make, and things like that, and help with the kids' homework and things like that. So not having family members around certainly is something you have to work through. You put your mind to it. We all work hard, and that's probably, it's not an annoyance. It's a difficulty to work through.
Yeah.
And and I'd say probably starting off a little bit later as well. I'm consciously aware that we've got to work a little bit harder to try and contribute to superannuation and things like that. A lot of younger Aussies might be contributing towards their pension scheme or the superannuations instead of 20. And if we only started off in our 30s, you don't have the benefit of all the compounding interest, so you've got to try and work a little bit extra to try and make up for it. So again, that's not an annoyance. That's just something I'm conscious of, and we actively try and catch up that ground.
It's an interesting thing that you've mentioned, because what I found with the Australians, when they're in their mid-20s to 26, 7, 8, they're already starting to buy their first home.
Very much, I agree.
I cannot remember many friends I had at that age in South Africa who were buying a house.
No, very much. I'd agree. So I think home ownership, they do try and own their home. Well, purchase their first property at a young age. I totally agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, interesting. If there were people watching here thinking, I wonder if I should go to Australia, what advice would you give them?
I can't see why you'd stay in South Africa. I would say, I see on Facebook a fair bit, people say that maybe they've got 15 years, 20 years experience, but they don't have the qualifications for it, for whatever job they may be doing. Is anybody out there willing to try and sponsor them? I would say rather take the time and just work out the skills on the skills demand list and actively work to try and get those skills or formalize those qualifications. If you are serious about trying to come to Australia, why would you hand your future over to somebody else and hope on a job sponsorship? You're better off just taking your own destiny and actively working towards it. I studied, so I left school when I was 18 as per normal, and I don't think I finished studying until I was in my 40s, early 40s. So I studied part-time for 20 years. And I'm not saying that to say, oh, look how good I am. But the point I'm making is just a constant improvement and trying to get yourself better. So if there's anybody out there who's got all the skills but not the qualifications, I can't say you won't get a job through job sponsorship. I just say the odds are stacked against you. Certainly, I think I know my perspective growing up in South Africa, in terms of rugby and sport and things like that, I was always looking towards Australia as not the enemy, just as a big competitor. When I came to Australia, South Africa is a very small little blip on the radar. South Africa doesn't really feature too much in the Australian radar. And you might have all the job skills and a great network of people back in South Africa, but you've got to try and look at things through an Australian employer's eyes. They might have 40 or 50 resumes come across their desk. Why are they going to choose yours just because you've got a great rapport with somebody, or you've got a great network, or you can maybe got the gift of the gab? If you know the qualifications, then you'll end up in the bin, is my opinion. So I would say be active and get in the front foot and formalise your qualifications. Or even if academics isn't your thing, which had I known when it came to Australia, I don't think I would have persevered with doing the engineering degree. I think when I'd left school, I probably would have gone and done a trade and just been happy with the trade and come straight to Australia. So you may need to even sort of branch out and do something else. Again, I would say just look at the skills and demand list and see what's there, see what you can maybe lend yourself to. Obviously, if you're the main breadwinner in the household, you can't just chuck your job in and go study something else. But that's the avenue I would be looking at.
Well, you can always study part-time like you did. You can still have your day job and study part-time. Yeah, absolutely.
I did it for 20 years. So yeah.
Or your wife or your partner could study something that's on the skills list and come in.
100%, yeah.
Just following on from what you said there about doing a trade, what's potentially quite different in Australia to South Africa is that tradespeople in Australia earn a really good wage. And in South Africa, it's not necessarily the same always, but in Australia, the guy who, let's generalize here, the guy who mow the lawns lives next to the doctor, who lives next to the plumber, who lives next to the civil engineer. Or it's
100%.
They earn so well that there's no reason for South Africans not to want to study a trade or do a trade and then come to Australia and think, oh, I'm not going to earn a good wage. In fact, sometimes I think it's a better option than having a white collar job as such, because they do so good here.
So I don't do a trade necessarily, but I've traded in my white collar job for a blue collar job, and I get paid a good wage. In fact, I think I get paid more doing what I'm doing now as opposed to what I would have been earning as engineer. And you're 100% spot on. Your trades are very well supported in Australia. And I've often thought, if you're a tradie, all you have to do is rock up on time, just do what you say you're going to do, and just know how to speak, how to be friendly to people. And I don't think you'll have all the success in the world in Australia. I think anyway, but I'm not a tradie, and I don't have my own business. So
it's been so fascinating talking to you. Thank you so much, Warren. I really appreciate you taking the time. Did you have any parting thoughts that you wanted to leave our viewers with?
No, I think the biggest reason I suppose people come to Australia is to worry about the future. And if you've got kids, you worry about your kids' future. There's no ways I could go away for work for 7 days and leave my wife and kids at home by themselves. I only do it because we live in a country where there is crime, but it's fairly petty, minor crime in comparison. So make the right decision, try and separate the emotions, and give it a full go. It's a big country, and they rely on the migrants to keep the economy going forward, as much as the politicians probably wouldn't say that. It's a declining birth rate in Australia and in most of the Western world, and they rely on the immigrant workforce to try and drive that economy. That's a fact. So I'll leave it at that.
Thanks so much. Great words. And yes, thank you for sharing your story again. There will be people going, if Warren can do it, I'm sure that we can do it as well. So thank you for sharing. Appreciate it. And
no worries.
Enjoy. I hope it's your week off. You're at home with your week off.
No, I head back out tomorrow afternoon.
Oh, good luck. Enjoy the trip out, and don't worry. In a week you're back, and you can settle in with the family again.
Okay. No worries, mate.
Thanks. Oh, thanks, mate. Take care. See you later.
Ciao.
Bye.
All right. So thank you so much for joining me today. If you had fun, please remember to hit that subscribe button, and then it'll make sure that you never miss a thing. I'll see you same time and same place next week. Bye for now.